Weeks passed, but time didn't soften anything the way people promised it would. Life resumed its shape of work, errands, polite conversations, but everything felt slightly misaligned, like furniture moved an inch to the left. I laughed at the right moments, answered questions, showed up where I was expected to be. Still, there was a quiet ache beneath it all, a constant awareness of something unfinished. I stopped checking my phone as often, not because I didn't want to see his name appear, but because I knew it wouldn't. At night, I replayed fragments instead of memories. His voice on the phone. The untouched coffee. That single word, always. It haunted me more than any confession could have. It was a promise disguised as farewell, or maybe the other way around. I told myself we were strangers again. That lie was easier to say than to believe. One afternoon, as I was leaving work, I passed a medical building downtown. The automatic doors slid open, releasing the familiar scent of antiseptic and something sharper beneath it. My steps slowed without my permission. For a split second, I imagined seeing him there, head bent over a chart, brows drawn together in concentration. He wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Still, my chest tightened, the same old pressure returning like muscle memory. I wondered if he felt it too, wherever he was now. If certain places still pulled at him the way they did at me that night. An email appeared in my inbox. No subject line, just one sentence in the body. I thought you should know. I almost turned back. I stared at the screen, heart racing almost. Those 7 letters undid weeks of careful restraint. I typed a response, erased it. Typed another. Deleted that too. My hands trembled, the cursor blinking impatiently, demanding a decision I wasn't ready to make. Why didn't you? I finally wrote. The reply came slower this time, because some lines don't disappear just because we wish they would. I exhaled sharply, emotion flooding in all at once, relief, frustration, longing, fear, and yet you crossed them. I typed. So did you? He answered. Silence followed. I set my phone down and walked to the window. The city lights glowed steadily below, indifferent to the turmoil they overlooked. Somewhere out there, he was building a new routine, meeting new people, convincing himself this was necessary. So was I. But necessity didn't erase connection. My phone buzzed once more. If our paths cross again, he wrote, I don't know who I'll be. I pressed my forehead to the glass, eyes closing, and neither do I replied. The typing bubble appeared. Vanished. Appeared again, then nothing. Minutes stretched. The quiet grew heavy when I finally picked up my phone. There was no new message. Just the echo of possibility hanging between us, unresolved and alive. I turned off the screen, heart still racing, one question refusing to settle. If fate gave us another moment, would we be strong enough to walk away, or honest enough not to? That morning, the sky hung low and grey, pressing against the glass windows as if it wanted inside. I remember noticing how the drops slid down in uneven lines, some racing, some hesitating, like they couldn't decide where to go. I felt the same way sitting there, hands folded too tightly in my lap, waiting for my name to be called. Routine checkup, I kept telling myself. Nothing more. The waiting room was quiet except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the soft rustle of magazines no one actually read. A cough from somewhere behind me. The distant click of a keyboard. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. Still, my chest felt tight, as if my body knew something my mind was trying to ignore. When the nurse finally called my name, her voice sounded too loud. I stood up quickly, almost knocking my knee against the chair, and followed her down the narrow hallway. The walls were painted a dull blue, meant to be calming, I suppose, but they made everything feel colder. Doctor will be with you shortly, she said, gesturing toward the exam room, and then I was alone. I sat on the edge of the examination table, paper crinkling beneath me, staring at the anatomical posters on the wall. A perfectly labeled human body. Clean. Orderly. Nothing messy or complicated about it. I wished my own thoughts were that simple. I hadn't seen Dr. Amir in nearly a year. That realization came suddenly, like a skipped heartbeat. He'd been the one to reassure me during my first visit, calm voice, steady hands, eyes that actually looked at you instead of through you. Back then, I told myself my reaction to him was just nerves. Gratitude. Nothing else. It had to be. Still, I'd notice small things. The way his presence filled the room. The pause before he spoke, as if weighing every word. How silence around him felt heavier than sound. The door opened softly. He stepped in, white coat crisp, expression professional, but his eyes lingered for just a fraction of a second too long. Or maybe I imagined that. I often wondered if I imagined too much. "How have you been?" he asked. A simple question. Ordinary, yet my throat tightened. My answer came out careful, rehearsed. "Fine. Busy. Same as everyone else." He nodded, made notes, asked routine questions. "Blood pressure. Sleep. Stress." His voice was even, controlled. But there were pauses, small, deliberate gaps where neither of us spoke. In those moments, the room felt smaller, the air thicker. When he moved closer to check my pulse, I became acutely aware of distance. Of how close was too close. Of how the brush of his fingers sent a sharp awareness through me that had nothing to do with medicine. "This isn't appropriate," my mind whispered, but another thought followed, quieter and more dangerous. "What if he feels it too?" He pulled his hand back quickly, clearing his throat. His gaze dropped to the chart, then lifted to me again, unreadable. For a moment, he didn't speak at all, and in that silence, I realized something had shifted, something unspoken, something irreversible. Was it just my imagination, or had this checkup crossed a line the moment neither of us wanted to acknowledge? The sky was bruised that evening, heavy with dark clouds that promised rain but hadn't yet delivered. I sat on the edge of my bed, the soft hum of the ceiling fan doing little to calm my restless thoughts. My apartment smelled faintly of coffee and the lingering scent of last night's candle, vanilla with a hint of something sharp, like peppermint. I rubbed my hands together and felt the slight tremor in my fingers. It was just another checkup, I told myself. Routine. Harmless, yet, as I straightened the collar of my shirt and glanced at the mirror, I realized my reflection looked unfamiliar, eyes wider, lips tighter, posture taut. There was a tension coiled inside me that had nothing to do with health. Something else. Something unspoken. The clinic was quiet when I arrived, the kind of quiet that felt almost intentional, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. A bell chimed softly as I pushed open the door, the receptionist's polite smile barely cutting through the sterile atmosphere. The air smelled of antiseptic and paper, too clean, almost artificial. I shuffled into a seat in the waiting room, letting my gaze drift to the faintly humming fluorescent lights above. Each flicker made me flinch, and I caught myself wishing I had come at another time, a time when the world felt less charged. I had seen him before. Dr. Amir. His calm voice, the way he made each word deliberate, measured, almost intimate. And yet there was something in his presence that unsettled me, though I hadn't been able to put my finger on it until that first appointment. The way silence seemed heavier when he was near. The sound of a door opening made me jump. A nurse called my name, her tone brisk, professional. I followed her down the narrow hallway, noticing how the light seemed harsher here, the walls painted an uncomfortably sterile blue. I tried to steady my breathing. "The doctor will see you shortly," she said. Alone in the exam room, I perched on the edge of the table, the paper beneath me crackling with every slight movement. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the windows in a rhythmic, almost ominous pattern. I tried to focus on anything other than the way my pulse had sped up when I saw his name on the schedule, printed neatly on the clipboard, and then he arrived. Dr. Amir stepped inside, coat crisp, posture professional, but the pause before he spoke made my stomach lurch. His eyes lingered on me for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Or maybe I imagined it. I had a habit of imagining things, overthinking the smallest gestures. But this felt different. "How have you been?" he asked, voice calm, steady. I smiled tightly. "Good. Busy. Same as always." He nodded, glancing at my chart. Silence stretched between us, weighted and deliberate. I felt my hands fidget, the table cold beneath me, my heart thumping like it was trying to tell me something I wasn't ready to hear. As he moved closer to take my blood pressure, I became acutely aware of distance, of proximity. The brush of his fingers over my arm sent an electric awareness through me, and I caught myself hesitating, wanting to pull away, yet somehow frozen, captivated. I reminded myself, this is just a checkup. Nothing more. Yet deep down, a dangerous, unspoken question lingered. What if he feels it too? The air between us was charged, unsteady, as if the room itself was holding its breath. And in that silence, I realized, whatever was about to happen, nothing would feel routine ever again. The next few days passed in a blur of routine that felt forced, almost staged. A morning light spilled through my bedroom curtains at the same angle every day, illuminating the same dust particles floating in the air. I woke, showered, dressed, answered emails, drank coffee that tasted weaker than usual. Everything was normal, too normal. Yet beneath it all, there was a low hum of unease, like a sound you only notice once you're trying to fall asleep. I kept replaying the checkup in my head, not what was said, but what wasn't. The silence. The pause. The way Dr. Amir's eyes had lingered just long enough to make me doubt myself. You're reading into it, I told myself. You always do. Still, I caught myself checking my phone more often than usual, as if expecting a message that would never come. Of course he wouldn't reach out. He couldn't. That was ridiculous. Unprofessional. Dangerous. And yet the idea settled into my thoughts and refused to leave. The following week, a dull ache appeared in my chest, nothing sharp, nothing alarming, just enough to make me uneasy. Under normal circumstances, I would have ignored it. Stress, I would have said. Too much coffee. Not enough sleep, but I didn't ignore it. I booked another appointment. When the confirmation email arrived, my stomach twisted. Same doctor. Same clinic. Same time of day. It felt like the universe nudging me forward when I wasn't sure I wanted to move at all. The day of the appointment, the weather had shifted. The sky was clearer, sunlight bouncing off the pavement outside my apartment. Birds perched on power lines, chirping like nothing in the world was complicated. I paused before leaving, hand on the doorknob, suddenly aware of how fast my heart was beating. It's just a follow-up, I reminded myself. That's all. The clinic looked the same, but it felt different, like returning to a place after a dream and realizing the walls haven't moved, but you have. The receptionist smiled politely. The chairs creaked under familiar weight. Somewhere, a phone rang and went unanswered longer than it should have. That absence unsettled me. When my name was called, it wasn't the same nurse as before. This one avoided eye contact, her steps brisk as she led me down the hall. As we passed the exam rooms, I noticed one door slightly ajar, lights off inside. Doctor running late. I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated. Just a second. But it was enough. He'll be with you soon, she said, then closed the door behind me. The exam room felt colder this time. I sat down, then stood again, restless. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have, each second stretching thin. I checked my phone. No signal. Typical. For minutes passed. Ten.15. Thoughts spiraled. Had he cancelled? Been reassigned? Was I relieved or disappointed when the door finally opened? I turned too quickly. It was him. Dr. Amir stepped inside, but something about him was different. His coat was still crisp, his posture professional, yet there were faint shadows under his eyes, like he hadn't slept well. He closed the door more carefully than necessary, as if aware of the sound it made. I'm sorry for the wait, he said. It's okay, I replied, though my voice sounded unfamiliar to my own ears. He glanced at my chart, then back at me. The silence returned, not awkward, exactly, but charged. Like the air before a storm. You mentioned some discomfort, he said finally. Yes. Just all the pressure. Comes and goes. He nodded and stepped closer, reaching for his stethoscope. As he listened to my chest, his brow furrowed slightly. His focus was professional, precise, but I felt hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. Any stress lately? He asked. I laughed softly. Isn't that everyone? He smiled faintly, then stopped himself, as if remembering where he was. The smile faded, replaced by something more guarded. Lie down, he said gently. As I did, the ceiling light blurred above me. I stared at it, trying to quiet my thoughts, but my mind wandered anyway, to how close he was, to the weight of unasked questions pressing between us. You seem tense, he observed. I didn't think doctors were allowed to say that, I said, attempting humor. He exhaled through his nose. We notice more than people think. The words lingered. He finished the exam and stepped back, removing his glove slowly. Too slowly. He hesitated, then sat on the small stool beside the table instead of standing across the room like before. There's nothing alarming, he said. But I'd like to monitor it. Stress can manifest in strange ways. I nodded, relief mixing with something else, something heavier. Can I ask you something? I said before I could stop myself. He looked at me, alert now. Of course. The room felt impossibly quiet. Do you ever feel like silence says more than words? I asked. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That depends, he replied carefully, on who's listening. My heart pounded. I searched his face for clarity, for reassurance, for denial, anything. Instead, he stood abruptly. I should get back to my other patients, he said, voice controlled but strained. I sat up, disappointment sharp and sudden. Right. Of course. He walked to the door, hand on the handle, then stopped without turning around. He said, be careful with assumptions. The door closed behind him. I sat there long after he left, staring at the place where he'd stood, wondering what he meant, and whether he was warning me, or himself. As I finally stepped out into the hallway, I noticed the same exam room door still ajar. Inside, a light flickered briefly, then went dark, and for the first time, I questioned whether this story was only happening in my head, or whether we were both already caught in something we couldn't step away from. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same image, Mr. Hale's hand resting on the doorframe, the quiet curve of that unreadable half-smile, the way his voice dipped when he said you want a reason to stay. By morning, the apartment felt smaller. Not just physically, emotionally, like the walls had absorbed the tension he left behind and now breathed it back at me. The key still sat on the table, untouched, unmoving, yet somehow louder than anything else in the room. I avoided it like it was alive. By noon, I found myself pacing from the couch to the window, staring down into the courtyard where his office windows faced mine. The curtains were drawn. His car wasn't in its usual spot. Was he avoiding me, or giving me space, or watching to see what I would do? Every possibility made my stomach twist in a different way. Around 3 in the afternoon, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Purposeful. Stopping right outside my door. My breath snagged. A soft knock, not his. I knew the rhythm of his knock. He measured, confident, the kind that announced itself. This one was hesitant, like someone testing the idea of knocking at all. I opened the door. Maria, the old woman from the floor below, peered up at me with concerned eyes. Her grocery bag trembled slightly in her grip. Sweetheart, she whispered, I don't want to pry, but I saw Mr. Hale leaving your apartment last night. Late. My heart thudded painfully. She leaned closer. You be careful with that man. I swallowed. Why? Her gaze flicked nervously down the empty hallway. He's not unkind, she said, but he's intense. People get involved with him, and then they disappear. Or move out suddenly. Or start acting different. Just guard your heart, okay? I nodded, barely breathing, and she shuffled away. Her words echoed long after the elevator doors closed to disappear suddenly. Act different. Why did they sound less like warnings, and more like predictions? I closed the door slowly, the latch clicking like a gavel on a verdict I wasn't ready to hear. Hours passed. The key glinted. My mind spiraled. At dusk, my phone buzzed. A message from him. Hale, I'll be at the office late. If you need me, you know where to find me. My blood ran hot and cold at the same time. Need him? Was that what this was now? Another message followed, this one slower to appear, as though he hovered over the screen before sending it. Hale, don't make your decision in the dark. Come talk to me before midnight. Before midnight. Why that specific deadline? Why did it sound less like an invitation, and more like an ultimatum twisted into concern? My hand shook as I read it again. The apartment suddenly felt suffocating, a box filled with questions and too little oxygen. I grabbed my jacket, hesitated, then, without letting myself think, snatched the key from the table. The metal was warm, almost as if someone had held it recently. My heartbeat stumbled. Had he been here, watching, checking if I would pick it up, or was I imagining the warmth because I needed an excuse to walk toward him? The hallway felt longer than usual as I stepped out, each footstep heavier than the last. The building hummed with its normal nighttime sounds, pipes groaning, neighbors arguing faintly through thin walls, but everything felt different. Charged. When I reached the courtyard, a light flicked on in his office window. He was there, waiting, not patiently, not impatiently, just waiting. As if he'd been counting the seconds until I appeared. My fingers closed tighter around the key, and then a question, quiet, poisonous, impossible to ignore, slid into my mind. Am I walking toward a choice, or a trap I secretly wanted all along? I took a step, then another. His silhouette shifted in the window, turning toward me, and for a split second, I swear. He smiled. The office door was just ahead. My heart was already inside, but my mind whispered the one question I wasn't ready to answer. Was I about to find the truth, or lose myself in it? If you want, I can assemble the full 4,000-word script, create visual prompts for every section, or generate a thumbnail prompt that matches this exact story. The call came 3 nights later. I was standing in my kitchen, the window cracked open to let in the cool air, listening to the distant sound of traffic humming like a restless animal. My phone buzzed against the counter, startling me so badly I nearly dropped the glass in my hand. Unknown number. For a moment, I considered letting it ring. I already knew how dangerous curiosity could be. But my chest tightened, that same pressure returning, and before my better judgment could intervene, I answered, "Hello." There was silence on the other end. Not empty silence, intentional. Measured, then his voice. Lower than I remembered. "Tired, it's Dr. Amir." My breath caught. Is everything okay?" Another pause. I imagined him standing somewhere quiet, maybe his office after hours, lights dimmed, door closed. That image alone felt wrong. Intimate in a way it shouldn't. "I reviewed your chart again," he said. "There's something I should have mentioned." My stomach dropped. "Something serious?" "No," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Not medically." I closed my eyes. The room felt suddenly smaller. "Then what?" He exhaled. I could hear it clearly, as if he were standing right beside me. "I shouldn't be calling you like this," he said. But I didn't want to leave it unresolved. The word echoed in my head. "Unresolved, doctor," I began. "Amir," he corrected softly, then stopped himself. "I mean, silence again. Thick. Dangerous." "I felt it too," he said finally. The world tilted. "Felt what?" I asked, though every part of me already knew that moment. He replied, "That tension you're pretending didn't exist." My hand tightened around the phone. "This isn't appropriate." "I know." His voice cracked just slightly. "That's the problem." I leaned against the counter, my reflection staring back at me from the darkened window. I looked like someone on the edge of a decision they couldn't undo. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I can't stop thinking about it," he admitted. "About you?" My heart hammered painfully. "You're my doctor." "I won't be any more," he said quietly. "I've already requested a transfer of your care." That shocked me more than the confession itself. "You did what?" "I had to," he said. "For both of us." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The city outside continued on, indifferent. Somewhere, a siren wailed and faded. "Meet me," he said suddenly. My pulse spiked. "What?" "Just to talk," he added quickly. "Somewhere public. Neutral." This was the moment. The line I could still step back from. I thought of his warning. "Be careful with assumptions." "I shouldn't," I said. "I know," he replied. "If you say no, I'll understand." I closed my eyes. "Yes," I whispered. "We met at a small cafe near the clinic, quiet, dimly lit, the kind of place people went to be alone together without being noticed." Rain tapped softly against the windows, blurring the world outside. He was already there when I arrived, seated in the corner, hands clasped around an untouched cup of coffee. He looked different without the white coat. More human. More vulnerable. "You came," he said as I sat down. "So did you." A weak smile flickered across his face, then disappeared. "This is a mistake," he said. "I know," I replied. The words hung between us, meaningless in their honesty. He leaned back slightly, as if creating distance on purpose. I keep replaying that first appointment, wondering when it started. "Maybe it didn't," I said. "Maybe we're just projecting." "Are you?" he asked gently. I swallowed. "No," he nodded, as if that confirmed something he already feared. "I've built my life on control," he said. "Rules. Boundaries." Then you walked into my office and suddenly silence felt louder than any rule. I looked down at my hands. I felt seen, I admitted. And that scared me. His fingers twitched, resisting the urge to reach across the table. "This can't happen," he said again, more to himself than to me. "I know," I repeated. Outside, thunder rolled distantly. He stood abruptly. "I should go." Panic flared. "Wait." He froze. "I don't know what this is," I said, standing too, our faces now closer than they should have been. "But I don't want it to end like this." His eyes searched mine, conflict written clearly across his face. Guilt. Desire. Fear. All colliding. "If I stay," he said, "we cross a line." "What if we already have?" I whispered. The cafe door opened suddenly, letting in a rush of cold air and voices. Reality crashing back in. He stepped back, shaking his head. "This is dangerous." "So is pretending we're unaffected." For a moment, I thought he might reach for me. Instead, he turned away. "I can't," he said, voice breaking. "Not tonight." He walked out, leaving his coffee untouched. I stood there, heart racing, rain streaking the glass between us as he disappeared into the night, taking answers with him. And as I sat back down, alone again, one question burned louder than the rest. Had that been our ending, or only the point of no return?